G'day, welcome, Stephen Travers here. I'm just going to turn the air conditioner off so that we don't have the distraction of the noise throughout this, or at least I don't have the distraction of the noise. I'm not sure how apparent it is or isn't to you, but welcome to another, for me, Sunday night live session, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world. I would love to hear in the chat where you're watching from, if you're watching this live. The topic for tonight, section for this chat, is what are the benefits of drawing to a time limit? And this is something I've thought about a lot lately because of the 10-minute daily practice drawings I've been producing videos for and doing a whole lot more myself, and just thinking about the whole process of drawing in a different way to perhaps the way I had before I started doing this as a consistent process. So when I talk about the benefits of drawing to a set time limit, I mean that when we draw, we say to ourselves, I'm going to finish this drawing in 10 minutes. 10 minutes is actually pretty quick, I've discovered. So let's say 15, 20, or maybe 30 minutes. 30 minutes is actually still a pretty short time to start and finish a drawing. So why would we do that? Why would we say, I'm going to get this done within this time limit? Won't that just mean that something that we might have done well if we took more time and more thought and more effort will be done not as well, that we'll rush it, that we'll make hasty decisions, that we just won't be as careful because we'll be more concerned about the time than about what we're drawing? Isn't that going to be the result of this? And isn't part of the joy of drawing is that we can take our time, that we can do whatever needs to be done in whatever time it takes us? Well, look, there's nothing wrong with drawing for any length of time, of course. The question is, what's going to be helpful for where I'm at and where I'm wanting to go in my drawing? We often focus on how we draw. We often focus on what we draw. We often focus on the techniques we have when we draw, but we don't often focus on the time it takes when we draw. And it would be interesting to have a group of people together say, like, well, look, we have 7 people now. So before any of you go, are you able on the chat to just tell me what would be the average length of time you would spend totally on a drawing? I would love to have some ideas. Is it 10 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? The drawings I used to do for my Instagram channel took me about 6 hours to do, maybe 5 if they weren't as complicated. But I'd love to hear some people say what they think an average time length is for their drawings, and just get a sense of that. No answers yet, but I hope you can. And of course, there's nothing wrong with taking a long time. I suppose that the longer the time we take, the less chance that we're going to draw in one session. But there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. There's nothing necessarily wrong with doing something and coming back to it at a later date. But it may not be helpful. It may not be helpful for many of us with where we're at in our drawing. Look, if I'm completely happy with my drawing experience, then in a sense, I don't need to change anything. If I'm happy with what I do and how I do it, and I do it for fun and I enjoy it, then why change? But if I'm not happy with something about my drawings, particularly with how they're drawing out, how they're turning out, can I suggest that maybe the answer lies in changing somehow the way we do things? Because there's that old saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again the same way, but hoping for a different result. And with all the things that affect how our drawing looks, a lot of them go very deep back into our past and our experience and our way of thinking, and into the process for drawing that we've learned. A lot of them go way back, and they can be quite complex, but they're not things that we can change easily or quickly. One thing that we can change easily is how long we take to draw. Thanks, Diane. Answering, saying probably an hour or two. Not an expert. Doesn't matter how complicated your drawings are or not. It's simply how long a session do you think when you sit down to draw. If anyone else who's listening wants to tell me approximately how long they draw for on average, whether it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 90 minutes, that would be great to hear. G'day, Joe. Okay, so Joe's saying that she always has a time limit because of her partner waiting when they're traveling. So it's a maximum of 20 minutes. So it's the patience of your traveling companion. So I take it you mostly draw on location, which is a great way to do it. Yeah. And so the question is, what sort of time am I talking of? Well, I'm talking of a time limit of between 15 minutes to 30 minutes, because I think 15 minutes is long enough, and more than 30 minutes starts to be longer than I think would give most of the benefits that I want to talk about in this section. So the first reason to have a time limit is sort of a generalization that sort of covers the rest of it, and that's that to have a time limit forces me to change. To have a time limit that's different to the one I normally do, it forces things to be stirred up. If I normally draw in 60 minutes, then I can't draw in 30 minutes without making some significant changes to what and how I draw. And I think the truth is, if we're honest, we really can fall into a rut. If I were teaching a class over a year drawing as a general course, then part of what I'd be wanting to do would be to keep everyone stirred up in the way they drew, in what they drew, in the time they had to do certain drawings, so that they were constantly being pushed from one place to another, and weren't able to sort of settle into too strong a pattern, or dare I say a rut. I'd be changing things all the time, so that it because when we're learning, and the more we can be exposed to in our drawing, the better. Now, of course, a teacher can bring that in externally to a degree. When we're on a self-taught journey, if we're learning basically from YouTube videos, which I presume most people watching this are, then it's not so, that doesn't happen unless we make it happen. And what does happen is we tend to fall into the same pattern of doing things. We tend to end up drawing the same sorts of things, the same sorts of ways, over the same sort of time, using the same sort of techniques, and probably having the same sort of results overall. And the question is, if we're not happy with the results, or not the question, but the point is, if we're not happy with the results, how do we get different results? And we don't get it by keeping things the same. We get it by changing something. And as I just said, changing the time we draw it in is the easiest and fastest way to really shake up, to really stir up the creative possibilities that we have within us, that having fallen into a bit of a drawing routine, a bit of a drawing rut, has kind of blinded us to. And a lot of it is to do with security, with feeling that what we draw is going to turn out, and we're desperate for a nice drawing at the end, because that's why we draw, to get nice drawings. And so we don't want to risk that by changing things. And can I say, that thinking is very counterproductive to learn in. Now, if I'm an experienced artist and I'm very happy with what I do and the way I'm doing it, well, I'm probably not watching YouTube how to draw videos anyway. Then it doesn't really matter. But if I'm aware that I'm still beginning, that I'm still on a drawing journey, and I'm not completely happy with my results, changing the time and setting myself a set time limit is, I think, really helpful, really important. So firstly, it lets creativity flow into new areas. Can I say that one of the really big strengths, this next one, and again, if anyone else who's listening would like to just give me a quick chat comment and let me know, what's your average drawing time? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 60 minutes? Is it 90 minutes? I'd love to hear that. And I always love to hear where people are watching from. So whatever part of the world, I'm on the outskirts of Sydney in Australia. So it's Sunday night here. I always love to hear just where you are. Just blows my mind still the way the internet works. But one of the really helpful things of having a short period of time is that I finish in one session. See, that's the other thing about this. It's not that I have a 15-minute drawing session or a 30-minute drawing session. It's that I finish my drawing in that session. That's really important. And that's because it's the combination of the time and having to finish my drawing within that time that puts the pressure, that squeezes me out of the rut that I've been in, because I can't accomplish that in the time that I would normally spend. From Turkey and Sunday and draw an hour in a week. From Hamburg, wonderful. I'm hoping to get to Germany later this year. Yeah, not too far from Hamburg, I don't think. And the reason why I think it's really helpful to finish in one drawing, and so to have a set time limit, is there's a couple. One of the big ones is that a lot of people have trouble finishing their drawings. They have trouble getting to the end of the drawing. It's and so they might draw for maybe an hour and then they don't have any more time, or they're feeling a bit tired. And then next drawing session, the temptation is to start something new because, well, why would I pick up something where I can see all the issues I have with it when I could start something, I have a blank sheet of paper, I could start something with all the promise of perfection ahead of me in it. So why wouldn't I do that? There's an issue about my voice. Thanks, Stanley. Yeah, I think I can see that it's not quite matching up with my mouth, but from what I can see, it's pretty close. I've had problems with the last 2 live sessions, but I discovered I had very low upload speeds, and my upload speed tonight is very good. I checked it. It's why I was 30 seconds late, because I checked the upload speed to make sure that it was good, and it was very good. So can you hear my voice, or is it just the sync with my lips? That would be great to hear. But there's not much I can do about that, I'm afraid. So when we have to finish in one session, and it's a time session and it's no more than 30 minutes, it doesn't give us time to start getting precious in our thinking, to start overanalyzing things or becoming too cautious. We have to commit. Thanks, Diane. Thanks, Stanley. We have to commit to what we're doing with some level of briskness. Hi there, Lee. Long time no here, Lee, as far as I can see, but great to have you. Yeah. The other important thing is there are skills we learn in the second half of the drawing that we can't learn until we get there. So if we're not finishing our drawings, if we start something, it's either too ambitious or we're going to too much detail or whatever. And so we're thinking, I'll finish that in the next session, and then we don't finish it, then we don't learn the skills that you only learn in the second half. They're really very different skills. And I've got to say, the skills we learn in the second half when we draw are far more fun than like a lot of the pressure is off by then. Things have or haven't worked, or we're trying to repair some things or whatever. But I really like the second half of the drawing skills. I should do a video on what we learn when we finish drawings, because what we learn is the pulling together of all the components, the trying to mitigate any things that haven't worked out real well, but also tweaking the values, emphasizing some things, and pulling back from other things. So they're really important skills, and they're just as important as learning how to start a drawing, how to commit to a good sense of proportion and get the perspective angles right as we start. It's just as important to learn how to pull everything together to capture the feel rather than the form of what we're drawing. The first half of the drawing is usually more about capturing the form of what we see, getting the basic angles and the shapes and the proportions correct, and doing it in a way that sets the stage for a sense of 3 dimensions. But it's in the second half when we start to add all the lines that create the effects that we're after, that we create the feel. And so if we only ever get halfway through, then we never practice those things, and therefore those skills don't develop, and we may not even be aware that we're not developing them. And again, if I was in a course with a teacher in front of me, they'd be cracking the whip to make sure I finish things and working on those skills as part of the curriculum. Does anyone watching have a trouble with getting to the second half? Or if you don't finish it in one go, is it always tempting just to start again? Yep. So I think that's important. And look, tying in with that, when we set ourselves a time limit, it's, in my mind, the biggest way we can tackle perfectionism head on. There are different things we can do, and I've got, 3 or 4 videos maybe that look at, if we draw, how can we get rid of perfectionism in our thinking and therefore in our drawing. But I do believe the quickest, easiest, most impacting thing we can do is to give ourselves a time limit, because it takes it puts a pressure on us that's not, this has to be correct. It gives us a different pressure to worry about, and it's an incompatible pressure. We can't do both. We can't fuss and be fearful and overanalyze and not be able to cope with mistakes if I have to finish this in 15 or 20 minutes. And so what I learned to do is, as I rapidly progress the drawing, I'm having to accept every mark I put on the paper as part of my drawing and work to integrate it in. Now, as I do more of these fast timed drawings, then I learn how to do that more accurately, so that there are less and less lines that I'm not happy with. But I learn how to just include them rather than start again or try to erase things or so forth. I find that the mental framework that having to finish my drawing in a set time gives me, and I didn't really understand this until I began to do these 10 to 15 minute real-time videos. The frame of mind that you have to do them is really incompatible with perfectionism. It's like a toxic environment for perfectionism to exist in. Suddenly saying that shaping is easy, but hatching is hard. Look, hatching can be difficult, and I think I have quite a few videos on hatching. I think I even have a playlist on hatching, actually. I've put some of them on a playlist. My basic take on hatching is, when you hatch, we're hatching the form. My first option is always hatch in a direction that reflects the underlying form of what the hatching's on, whether it's for the color of the object, whether it's for shade or shadow. Reflect what the object is that the hatching is on in some way. And the other issue that's the first consideration. The second consideration with hatching is then what's going to What's going to create definition within my drawing? Because the challenge with hatching is always that once we start to hatch lots of things, and we can get some great effects with hatching, but once we start to hatch with lots of, for lots of different reasons in lots of different parts of the reference of the photo drawing, we can start to lose what's what. We can have so many lines that it can start to be hard to tell, is this a hatching line or is this the line of the outside edge of the object or what? And so that can be a problem. So sometimes I don't hatch in the direction of the underlined form, because what I'm actually, I need to have some consideration for what will be easy to see. And I think that's why hatching perhaps is so difficult for people, because what we want is, we want the technique, we want the formula, and there is no magic formula, there is no magic technique. There is a range of ways we can do it. I don't ever cross hatch unless hatching isn't enough. If hatching, just having the lines in one direction, is enough, that's all I do. But sometimes you need more, either for definition or to create a darker value, and then you've got to work out the direction to put the second line over the top, that again still, if possible, reflects the underlying form, and also creates some definition from adjacent colors or values that you don't want just to merge in. You see that there is no magic answer. And so it's not like a perspective angle where you want to make sure you get it right and you can measure it. It's something that we have to learn to do. And we only learn to do it by doing it and learning the lessons when we do it. And can I say, and this is one of the points, one of the really great things about short drawing exercises is that we learn skills so much quicker, so much quicker. If I do a drawing in 15 minutes, and in that 15 minutes, I mess up the hatching, and I work out, well, why have I messed it up? What's gone wrong? And then in another 15 minutes, I do another drawing, and I might even do the same drawing and just work at getting the hatching more accurate. And I maybe, hopefully, improve it a little bit, doing the same drawing maybe. And then I do maybe a similar subject, and 15 minutes later, I have a third drawing, and I'm able to look at it and work out what hasn't worked in the hatching. And maybe I do a fourth drawing and I take some more risks and I do something a bit different, and it might work out really well. Well, what's happened? What's happened is I have spent 60 minutes drawing in total, and I have progressed my hatching understanding, technique, knowledge, really well. But I could have done a 60-minute drawing and still at the point of the first drawing, except I've now got this large drawing where I'm not happy with the hatching, and I don't have time to draw again for, maybe a fortnight. And so what might have been a 15-minute drawing every second day, and so at the end of 4 days, I've really progressed my hatching understanding and experience and practice. Is when you compare that to a 60-minute drawing where I'm still at the discouragement stage at the end of it, and by the time I have 60 minutes free to draw again, I've really forgotten everything that hasn't happened well in the other drawing. Whereas again, if I'm drawing for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, maybe I can do it in many more time slots. And that's another good benefit from drawing for short periods of times, is that it quite possibly frees up a lot more opportunity to draw, because I might have more 20-minute time slots in my week than I have 60 or 90-minute time slots. And so it becomes easier to draw. And I think that's very helpful as well. If you're enjoying this and you haven't hit the like button, please do. I would love to hear where you're watching this from. And I'd love to hear, what's your average time to do a drawing on the chat? And it's not just interesting for me, but I know that people who watch these videos when they're not live do read the chats as well and find it very helpful. And look, if you've got any question about drawing that you'd like to ask, then put it in the chat and I'll try and at least answer it briefly if I can. Okay. Um, okay. So I think they're the kind of big ones, but just from a learning point of view, a small amount frequently is such a powerful learning tool. It's such a powerful way that we learn anything. And you think of, kids doing piano practice, and they do whatever, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day and every day. And it's the consistency that really builds the benefit. And we want to capture that for our drawing. And I think another thing a short timed drawing period does for us is that it makes clear that I'm not producing an artwork. I'm learning to draw, and I'm doing a drawing exercise. Thanks, Arvin. Just saying he's a big fan. Appreciate that. Suddenly saying, when draw something good, I usually draw cars these days. I'm afraid of messing up the drawing. Yes. I used to avoid drawing cars because in my mind, I couldn't draw them. All that meant really was that I wasn't that interested in them. And so I didn't have experience drawing them, and I didn't have the same experience of observation and of drawing to bring. Um, um, One of I think actually the next point is that when we draw to a timed period, one of the benefits, besides the fact that we can develop our skills far more rapidly, as I said before, because if I do 4 15-minute drawing sessions, I can really build on a particular skill, such as hatching from one drawing to the next. But if I do just one 60-minute drawing, I can't. Is that in the same, I'm still just left with a bad drawing at the end of that. Hang on, I've got about 3 points I was about to say now. So which one will I say? Just linking back to the car, one of the benefits is that we can try more subjects because we're doing more drawings. And so, and we're doing them quickly and being more involved with the process than worrying about the result. And so I can try things I don't normally draw. And that's my experience with these short drawings, is I've been able to have topics, and I've done a couple of series of kind of different topics and subjects, and I've drawn things I don't normally draw. And it is fun. And sometimes we learn things when we draw different things. Yeah. So that's another benefit, because each drawing is not such a big deal that we can give a session to drawing a car in 15 minutes, even if we don't like cars, because it is good to, if we like to draw streets, it's good to be able to put things that look like cars rather than marshmallowy car-shaped blobs into our streets. So being able to do that is very helpful. I think another, and this is probably another one of the really big important benefits that you get from a time drawing, is it stops us thinking that we're producing artworks, because in 15 minutes, unless we're Picasso, we're not going to produce an artwork. We're clearly drawing and learning to draw and developing skills, and that takes a lot of pressure off us. Again, if we're perfectionistic tendencies in our thinking, then thinking that I have to have an artwork at the end really gives a lot of places for that perfectionism to grow, because we don't want to spoil our drawing. And so we can actually end up being paralyzed by fear. I've had people tell me that if the drawing doesn't turn out, they get halfway through, they get discouraged. If it is turning out, they're so fearful of a mistake that they can't continue it. And so they really want to, but the thought that it has to be perfect is just, cutting them off and stopping them from continuing. When I'm doing something in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, it's clearly part of a learning experience, a learning journey, and therefore it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be, but ironically, some of my fastest drawings are my favorites. I've got a drawing I did of a cathedral in Newcastle, in the Australian city of Newcastle, on a really windy day when I'd promised my wife I'd be back. And I came across this church on a headland kind of thing, and the wind was coming in from the Pacific Ocean. It was like a gale, and I had to hold my sketchbook down and just with a pencil, really roughly sketching. It was a bit of a kind of Victorian mock Gothic thing. So there was lots of kind of little details and little spires and things. And it was so rushed. And I knew I only had 10 minutes, maybe a few minutes more to draw it. And it was my favorite drawing of the day, because sometimes when we can't get precious, we can't overwork it, we just kind of go for it, and we capture something that we can't, that we lose when we overwork something trying to make it so precise. I'm never in favor of careless lines, but we can draw gesturally and with speed and movement and feeling, and we can capture things, and we can learn to capture things that we don't capture when we're measuring and being so very precise. What's Wayne saying? Hi, Stephen, watching from the other side of Sydney, Cronulla. I lived at Woolaware in 1980 for a year. My first year of teaching was at Gymea High. So there you go. Wayne draws or paints most days, usually 15, 30 minutes, but love it when get lost in the detail. It's easy to lose an hour or so, isn't it? Yeah, that's great to hear. Well, I think for drawing, 15 to 30 minutes is a great time session, but it doesn't matter what it is, but you'd want to have a sense of, this will take me 20 minutes, and you give yourself a minute or two, a couple of minutes either way. And it's that extra pressure of the time that I think really brings into focus most of these benefits. And so we don't get them if we're thinking, oh well, I'll finish when we finish. Suddenly is saying, sometimes finding some subjects to draw takes ages, and then changes my mind when I can't decide what to draw. Yeah, look, one of my points, let me just find it. Oh, that's right. After I finished talking about the benefits, I was going to talk about just ways to make fast drawing, like set time, work better. And one of the points is we have to have our references ready before we start the drawing session. We can't be running around looking for something to draw if we're going to draw for 15 minutes, because otherwise, it's crazy. You spend 20 minutes trying to find a reference, and then you've got 15 minutes to draw. And part of the process is that we can sit down and start quickly and easily. So I would suggest that, in fact, you might have a day where you're looking for things, or when you go out with your phone, you're always taking photos of things that could be a good drawing subject. And then when you come home and look at them and compare what your options are, print off 4 or 5 so that you've always got 4 or 5 subjects ready to go that are suitable for whatever length of time you think you want to have to draw in. And then you really only need to have 20 minutes free, because you're drawing straight away. But it does take thinking about drawing when you're not drawing to make sure you've got the references ready, whether you find them in books or whether you take them yourself or find them online. I guess people don't read books anymore. What's Diane saying? Yes, I think what you were saying about drawing to a smaller time is logical. The first drawing, if it is wrong, well, yeah, that's right. You wouldn't feel you've wasted a lot of time, and you can always blame the fact that you had to keep it within the time. So you even give yourself a bit of an excuse that it hasn't worked out, which, again, if we're fighting a perfectionism mindset and we're beating ourselves up for not being perfect, it gives us a backdoor escape for that too. And so we're left free to enjoy the experience and the process more, particularly if when you draw, you end up getting very tense and wound up and anxious about how it's going to turn out. This is a wonderful way just to step totally out of that and into, I think, a far healthier and far more enjoyable way of thinking when we draw. But as I said, having a timed limit gets us out of this mentality that I'm producing artworks, and puts me into the mentality of, I'm a student and I'm learning to draw. Now, there is a point where hopefully we become good enough that that's probably not so accurate. But in other ways, we're always learning, whatever skill, whatever, we're always learning, we're always improving, we're always honing. So, I mean, if we have an exhibition, then we need to produce some artworks. if I don't have an exhibition lined up or it's not a commission, then I'm learning, and I can really embrace the learning process. Now, I'm not an art teacher, but I was a high school teacher, as I mentioned, if you were listening, when I was talking about living down in the south of Sydney near the beach for one really very enjoyable year of my life when I was young. And the benefit of that is not that the English history that I taught has particularly helped me with my art, but as a teacher, I learned how to teach. And when you learn to teach, we have to learn how we learn, because that's what we're engaging with. We're helping the students learn. And so knowing how they learn means we can interact with those strategies and techniques. So it's really important to realize that it's not just a natural thing. It's not that some people, it's easy for them, they're born with talent. I don't think talent is a thing. In fact, what I think does happen is that some people are just born with life experience and maybe personality that can look as though it gives them it does give them a head start. It might give them more enthusiasm to want to learn to draw, and that actually means then that they work harder at it and commit to it and spend more time than the average person. The way that a kid who loves kicking a ball may look like they're more talented kicking a ball than when they come across another kid who has no interest in kicking any balls, and they play together and it looks like one kid has a lot of talent and the other doesn't. Well, it's just that one kid's had the interest that's made them want to apply themselves to that, and the other hasn't. I really think it works much the same way. Or it may not be experience in actually drawing that someone's had, but maybe they've had a job, or they've had hobbies where they've had to really learn to observe in a way that's helpful for observation when we draw. And therefore, they're further ahead the first time they try to draw than someone who's never had to do anything in their life, where they've had to observe in that same way as we need to observe when we draw, which is one of the problems anyway that we face when we draw, that the way we've learnt to see things for life most of the time is inadequate for what we need to see to be able to draw well, if we're trying to draw what we're seeing. And yeah, that's a problem, because we think we've learned to see things adequately, not appreciating that we've learned to see them adequately for whatever our life has required of us up till that point. But if it hasn't required drawing up until that point, then we haven't learned to see the way we need to see. And our drawings show us that. But I think we rush to think it's because we lack drawing skills, because it's easier to believe I lack drawing skills than it is to believe I lack observation skills, because that just seems, well, that's just so easy. You look at something and it's there. I still sometimes catch myself that I've got the pen about to hit the paper, and I suddenly think, I really don't know yet exactly how this mark is going to connect with the last thing I drew. And so I need to look again. And the temptation is that I start to draw without looking again. And now I'm drawing what I think I've seen, not what I've actually seen. Hello, Feyyaz from Turkey. I have a lot of people from Turkey actually who both follow me. I think Istanbul, on my Instagram account, just a quick digression, I think Istanbul is usually one of the top 5 cities in the world where I have followers on Instagram. Joe's saying there's a lot of crackling noise in the sound. Is everyone getting that, or is it not quite so bad for everyone? And if you haven't hit the like button and you're finding this interesting, please do. That would help me. Okay. I think sometimes okay, yeah, okay. Well, let me know if it gets too bad, but all I can do is stop. So I'm just using the built-in things from the built-in laptop stuff. But I have very, very good upload speeds, or I did just as we started this, because I checked it because of sound issues. The last 2, I checked the upload speeds before I started, and this is and the second device I used last week the aurora. No, there was no aurora the last 2 nights, the last 2 Sundays when I did this. So, and I used 2 different devices the previous 2. So, I don't know what I can do. Yeah, well, windy Wednesday. The USA is a long way from Australia, so maybe a little crackling is forgivable. I don't know. Will I shout more? Let's hope since it got worse, it can get better. Okay. The point I was saying before though was that the time pressure can put some pressures that maybe are a bit counterproductive, but I think there are far more beneficial pressures. I think one of the really good ones is that if we draw from photos, and my guess is that most of us, most of the time, draw from photos simply because photos are so accessible to us, whether we take them ourselves and print them off, or whether we I know where Marseille is, Saturn. I have been to Toulon. We had a lovely couple of days in Toulon because I've actually got some family on my mother's side. I have one of my mother's ancestors was one of Napoleon's admirals. So I have, I have a little French blood in me somewhere. Maybe that's why I love Paris so much. But one of the great benefits of having a set time is that it does force us to have different process and do things differently. And I think one of the big problems when we draw from photos is that we have an over literal way. We actually feel that the drawing will be more successful if it looks more like the photo and than not. And that my goal would be to do a drawing that looks the same as the photo. Well, I don't need to do that. I have the photo. I'm never going to draw something that looks more like the photo than the photo already is. So it's actually not, I don't think, a very helpful way of thinking. I think of the photo as my starting point, my springboard, and then I add my creativity to it. Photos have lots of weaknesses as well. They have lots of ways where they actually downgrade the experience of what we're looking at. And we can overcome those when we draw. So, but when we're drawing quickly, we just don't have the chance to be as literal, to copy all the detail the way possibly we could. And so we have to become more gestural, and we have to start to capture the effect of what we're seeing, because that will be faster than trying to draw the detail of what we're seeing. And it's such an important technique. It's so versatile for a range of subjects. This drawing the effect of what we see, not drawing the exact detail of what we see. And I have a playlist on that. And if you go through the playlist, you can see that technique applied to many, 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 many different subjects, whether it's cobblestone or bricks or leaves on a tree, whether it's crowds of people, whether it's the ornamentation on the front of the Musée du Louvre, or whether it's paintings, fresco paintings on walls or ceilings in interior scenes. Learning to see and to capture the effect of detail and to have marks to draw that, even when we're drawing in ink, in pen, in ink, directly in ink, freehand in ink, it works so well. So I can really, but that is a real, if we have unlimited time, we can really get bogged down in detail. And we, as I said, and if we're thinking we have to produce an artwork, and if we're thinking that if our drawing looks exactly the same as the photo, then that's going to mean it's a more successful drawing, then all these things will keep slowing us down more and more and more, and we have to get more and more detail. We'll get smaller and smaller. It'll take us longer and longer, and probably in the end, not an incredibly satisfying experience. So we can rejig all of that by saying it has to be finished in 20 minutes. I have to pace myself so that whatever I'm doing, it's finished and it looks finished in 20 or 30 minutes max. Tremendous benefits in that. And if you find this helpful, please hit the like button. If you haven't told me where you're listening from yet, I'd love to hear that as a chat comment. Um, yeah, I talked before about how one of the benefits was we can work on particular skills, such as, say, cross-hatching was the one I used. We can also use this to work on particular subjects, again, because we're completing our drawing in such a short period of time that we can do more of them more frequently. So let's say I'm one of the many people who has trouble drawing trees, say, trouble with foliage and with branches, and my trees never look real and they always look a bit cartoon-like, they never look natural. And maybe I've started to try and avoid drawing them, but sometimes I have to. Well, if I'm doing, let's say, 20-minute drawings, then I can do a drawing which has a tree in it. I could do a drawing of just a tree. I could do 4 drawings of just a tree over 80 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes. And in each of those drawings, just as with the hatching experience, with the technique experience earlier, in each of those drawings, fairly close together, I'm starting from where I left off because I still remember it. It's not 2 weeks or 3 weeks since my last 90-minute drawing session. It's the day before, or maybe the day before that. And so I still remember what was happening. I'm still aware of what I was aware of that did or didn't work. And that becomes my starting point for my next 20-minute drawing session. And because I'm just drawing trees, all of my focus is on improving drawing my trees or my cars or my people in the street. Whatever subject I feel is a weak spot, I'm just focused on that. I'm not having to draw the architecture, the buildings that perhaps I do quite well, or at least I do better than my trees or my cars or my people. And so I'm not, in a sense, I won't say wasting time, but I'm not repeating over and over again, drawing things that I don't need to learn as much as other things that I need to learn. And so what I'm doing is in my shorter timed drawings, I'm actually improving my skills in not just technique areas, but in subject areas. And then when I do combine everything together in a larger drawing, because I'm certainly not saying we should never do nice, relaxed drawings where we think, I'm going to do as long as it takes, whether it's 60 or 90 minutes to do this drawing nicely. Nothing wrong with that. But it works better if we've really fast-tracked our skill drawing, our subject matter drawing. We've developed nice, loose ways of working. All of these things, I think, mean that when we do a drawing of unlimited time, that it works. All the parts of it work. The technique, we've refined the techniques that we use, the hatching or whatever, for all the areas of our drawing, including the more challenging ones. We've worked out how we capture the effect of trees or of crowds or of cars or of foreshortening, whatever. And so we're just that much further ahead in what we do. But ironically, when we do go to draw for a longer period, we do it so much better and more confidently than if we hadn't done these short time sessions. Another benefit, and look, this is why I actually started doing fairly quick freehand ink drawing, was because I was getting ready for a trip to Europe in 2020 that unfortunately was cancelled because of COVID. And I wanted to be able to sit in the street and draw freehand in ink. And so I thought, well, I'll practice from photos. And so a fairly loose gestural style. I didn't want to have to fuss with an eraser. I thought would be good preparation. And then COVID and lockdowns, even in Sydney, we had lots of lockdowns in Sydney. But I found when I did get back out and I was location sketching, street sketching, which I'd only ever done, and not a huge amount, but what I had done was all in pencil. I found that by working from photos, but working in short, fairly brisk drawing sessions was incredibly good preparation. particularly if I wasn't too close to the subject. It is different if you're drawing something, particularly in an interior scene that kind of comes around you, or if you're drawing something where the buildings come alongside you on each side. But if we're drawing something that's a little bit back, then a lot of the skills that we develop drawing from photos, but fairly briskly, end up being really appropriate for location sketching. So it's also a good way to prepare for that when we don't have time to, or don't have the opportunity or time to do it. And just as it becomes easier to, I think, in short time sessions to experiment with different drawing techniques and with different drawing subjects, it also becomes, I think, easier to experiment with different media. So if I always draw with pencil, why not say, oh, look, for the next 10, 20-minute drawing sessions, I'm going to draw just directly with ink and see how it goes. Or I'm going to use colored pencils rather than just graphite. Or I'm going to use charcoal, or I'm going to use a bit of pastel, or whatever, that we can, as long as we can still start and finish within that time, we can play around with things, because we're doing more drawings because they don't take us long. And we start to get used to experimenting, to stepping out of our comfort zone. We start to develop nice, loose, brisk gestural techniques. And why not play around with them? And because we're not concerned now about an artwork at the end, it's a learning experience, then we're happy enough if we just learn. We don't have to have an artwork, because it was never, that's just a bonus if it's something that we think is worth looking at. But it's part of the learning experience. So, and look, I would say too, no, I'll leave that for the next point. Okay. So what do I think about using a ruler? My personal feeling is that generally I don't think that ruled lines combine well with freehand lines in the one drawing. I feel like if you use a ruler for part of it, like for maybe the longer lines, then you really need to use a ruler almost for every line, or at least every line that it doesn't look as though it had a ruler used. So because it, I don't know, to me, it just doesn't go together. Now, having said that, one of my favorite watercolor artists is Stephanie Bauer, an American architect who she combines freehand lines with rulers, but can I say she uses a pencil as the sort of underline line work for her watercolors, and she also uses the watercolor as well, that in a way I think disguises the difference between the two lines. So she makes it work. She makes it work amazingly. If you want to look her up on Instagram, it's Stephanie, it's Bauer, Bower. I haven't yet managed to start practicing experimenting with watercolor, but when I do, I want to do watercolor the way she does. Well, the way she does, and about 3 or 4 other watercolorists who I really follow their work and really admire it. So it's really good to be inspired by the work of others, because we're always learning. Okay, so here's a few quick ways that we can make our short time sessions work better. And I said, if you haven't hit the like button yet and you're finding these interesting and helpful, please hit the like button, help me out. Okay, I mentioned one of them already. That's have the references ready before we start our session. We're only going to be drawing. The whole idea is that we can start and finish and have our drawing in a short period of time. And so we can't combine that time with looking for something to draw. So the best thing is that we actually develop the mindset where we're always looking for things to draw. So when we're out, if we see something, we take a photo, and they don't have to be big, grand buildings, because for a 20-minute drawing, we want something reasonably simple. It can just be a house that has a little bit of something that's interesting for us. And it might be something in the architecture, or it might be something in the lighting. It's really good to have subjects with interesting lighting, because, well, if we draw with a pen, that really pushes our hatching skills. And hatching, I think hatching's even a bigger problem than perspective for people, I'm starting to think. Hey, Shakobi, in New Zealand, welcome. Good to have you join. Okay, so another way we can squeeze out more benefit from drawing to a time limit is have our spot set up. That's part of the being able to start straight away. Now, this one's important. We almost certainly will have to change the scale, the size of what we draw, because I can't do a large drawing in half the time it would normally take me. So I probably need to draw smaller than I am. And again, with this series I've been doing on sort of 10, 15-minute real-time drawing videos, I've gone smaller than I was drawing for most of the videos I was doing. So I'm mostly doing these on half A4, so A5 size. Hang on, A4, yes, A5. And another thing, and drawing on a smaller scale, again, whenever we change anything, it has a ripple effect of making us do things differently. So when I draw on a smaller scale, I need to develop my simplification skills further. I need to be able to capture what I'm seeing and still somehow capture the key visual elements of what I'm seeing, but with less. And that's a skill. We often think it's harder to do more detail. I would say that it's really harder to do less detail to do it well, because we're not just copying what we're seeing in some way, but we're actually having to process it and modify it using our own creativity as we translate what we see into something else. Jace's drawing for an architectural class, some hatching shade. Oh, mate, I talked about that for 10 minutes earlier. So if you want to kind of just go back a bit, I can't say it better I have now than I did then. So, but I do have a hatching playlist where my hatching videos are all there, and particularly some of the later ones. And also, if you look at some of my later tree drawing ones, I have a tree playlist as well, but we draw trees, we draw foliage. I think so, well, I do so much by hatching, and I've got a couple of videos lately that have been on a couple of forest scenes where there's a lot of hatching, where it's really capturing light effects coming through the forest. And of course, we only capture light by drawing the darkness, and so we really have to work hard to control and manipulate our hatching. And I actually feel if you want to improve your hatching, learn to draw trees and forest scenes well, because it really forces us to play around. And again, if we work on a smaller scale and keep it simple, like doing a forest scene with pen, they take me about 45 minutes, those drawings in real time. They're not 10-minute drawings. But it's the only way. So we need to do subjects that are hard to do with hatching, but basically follow the underlying form and choose directions that add clarity, not confusion, to what we're looking at. There is no magic technique. It's different every time. It's what will work the best in this scene, with this subject, with this lighting, is always the consideration, which is kind of good, because it really does come down in the end to our creative choices, and I think that's a good thing. Hi, Alex. Don't you find hard to then begin drawing large as you see Toshi? No, I don't. What happens is when I go large, I'm also giving myself more time. It's kind of exciting because it's a bit different again. And I did a drawing of a house 2 days ago it wasn't yesterday, 2 days ago, I think. There's a video, it's one of my most recent videos. I think it's drawing the effect of detail in cottages. So it's a house where there was a cottage where there was just lots of detail to capture the effect of. And I looked at this and I was going to actually do it for one of my short videos. And I thought, no, I don't want to simplify this as much as I would have to simplify it. And I said to myself, I'm going to take longer with this. And I think I took 45 minutes in real time. And I had a lot of fun because that sort of time pressure wasn't on me. And I could play around with more options in terms of the effects I was creating. And yet the confidence I've developed by doing these fast drawings frequently was still with me. It really was a very pleasant drawing. It was the first, I think, longer architectural drawing I've done. I've done a few tree and forest scenes that have been longer, but no, I just thought it was all go. Like, how does light interact with a building with its canopy? I don't know what that word means, mate. Or its roofing. I don't know how light works that way. Look, it's just a bit hard to talk in generalizations without actually seeing some examples, because we can say things, but I can be thinking one thing and you're thinking something different. But mate, check out my hatching videos. The first one are all to do with hatching and architecture. So if you find my hatching playlist, go to my playlist, look at my hatching ones to do with architecture first, and then have a look at some of the tree ones too, because hatching is so important to creating light effects. Sanley's, have I ever drawn anything only from my imagination? Not since I've started drawing as an adult, which was, really only consistently about 6 years ago. Although I painted for it's all reversed. I can't do that. I painted for 10 years before that. Look, when drawing from our imagination is much harder than drawing from a reference, but the principle is the same. Because when I draw from my imagination, I'm not making it up. I'm remembering things I've seen in reality, and I'm using those to create something that I'm looking at in my mind. And it may be a pose of a figure that I've not actually ever seen done, but from all the reference images I've stored in my mind of people being in different poses, I'm able to now construct what I need. It may be from all the photos of spaceships and book covers of science fiction magazines that I've seen, or just architectural drawings that I've seen, that I use all those to now construct an alien space station in my mind, or a city on a foreign planet or something. And but the truth is, all the things in my imagination they come from somewhere, and certainly I can rearrange and manipulate them, but at their base, at their heart, they're references that I've put in there. So I may not be looking at a photo when I draw, but I'm actually looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos that I've put in my mind that I'm now using. And of course, it's a big enough challenge when I have the reference next to me when I'm drawing. Big enough challenge to learn to observe that correctly, to draw it accurately. As I often say, we think when our drawing doesn't look right that we lack drawing skills. I think we almost never lack drawing skills. We've lacked the observation skills. We haven't actually seen what we've needed to see because we didn't look for the things that we need to see. We've looked the way we normally look, which is fine for everyday life, but it doesn't give me what I need to be able to draw it accurately, easily. And so with our imagination, we have to have put accurate things in our mind, enough things at some point that we've got them to draw on. We actually don't make them up. We store them, either deliberately or just through life. So if I want to draw from my imagination, the best way to fast track that is to make sure that I see things that I need to see, that I actually put things into my mind and I put them in a way that will most benefit what I want to pull out, if that makes sense. Okay, three more quick things about how to make a timed drawing session work better. The first one is to have skills in mind. So I did actually mention this before, and we talked about it with in terms of hatching as well. But when I'm finding references to draw, like, don't just draw things I like, and don't just draw the same thing over and over again, and particularly don't draw the same thing over and over again simply because I draw it well. They're the subjects I don't need to draw. If trees have become a comfortable, safe zone for me, I need to stop drawing them for a bit and bring my other skills for other subjects up to the same level for the other subjects. I need to really work at drawing cars, or at drawing horses, or at drawing faces, whatever it is I want to be able to draw for the things I want to be able to draw that I can't do so well now. They're the things I should be giving particular time to. And when I do that, I remind myself that this isn't about producing artworks, it's about learning to draw. And if I give myself permission to learn, and if in fact I give myself permission to appreciate that my entire life I will be learning, then that frees me up from a lot of preoccupation and anxiety and stress, and really frees me up to enjoy the whole drawing process. Hi, Nadeem. Is Nadeem your given name, or is Kashif? I feel like it's Nadeem, but it can be really hard to know, because I know that in some places the surname is first, and in other places, as in Australia, the surname is second. And yeah, it's not always obvious to me, and I don't like to call people by their family name. I'd rather use their given name. But yeah, and sometimes people call me Travers when they type in comments and stuff, and it's probably because in where they come from, the given name is the second one. And so yeah, anyway, and if you haven't hit the like button, then please, I'd appreciate that. If anyone has a general drawing question, where I've sort of reached almost the end of my points here. So if somebody just wants to ask some questions about drawing on something else, or the drawing experience, or my drawing journey, or something, then yeah, there's time for it. Just a couple of those as well. Okay, this is something I've been saying in quite a few different contexts now, so you've probably heard me say it, but don't use an eraser. You've only got 20 minutes. You haven't got time to be erasing lines, even if you can. Don't even think of an eraser as, why would you have to use an eraser when we're learning to draw? It's only if we have this, I need to have an artwork at the end, and therefore it needs to be perfect, and therefore I need to get rid of any lines that are wrong, instead of seeing our drawing as this process from start to finish. The truth is, most mistakes won't look nearly as bad, or even be at all obvious at the end, as when we first make them. We're much more likely to make a significant mistake at the start, when we have less on our paper to reference, and we sort of haven't warmed up. As we progress, we'll probably draw things, make our marks more and more confidently and more accurately. And most of the time, anything that's not quite right, we can adjust with more marks over the top. And if we're constantly erasing every line to draw it perfectly, we never learn those skills, because we don't give ourselves the chance to learn those skills. And when we learn those skills, they're part of learning the fluidity of the whole drawing process. I can't possibly anticipate how my drawing's even going to look at the end, except in a broad way, generalized way, when I start, because every drawing is a journey. Every drawing is trying to create an effect that I see in my reference at the start. But as I progress my drawing, I see possibilities. Perhaps not so much in the composition once I've started, because I commit to that. But definitely in the values and the kind of the lighting effects that we create, the things that we emphasize, the amount of detail that we choose to use or not use in certain areas to create a certain focal point. There are all these possibilities that we want to be alert to. And again, when we think our goal is to copy the photo as closely as we can, we cut ourselves off from all the things that will make our drawings sing at the end. I want my drawings to sing, and to sing something that's nice when they finish, that to have kind of a sparkle that you can almost hear. And I find that works most successfully actually in my shorter drawings, I think, the ones that turn out. So even if you're drawing with pencil and therefore you could erase lines, make a commitment that at least in these time limit drawings that you won't, and that you'll use these drawing exercises, because that's what we have to keep seeing them as. It's like practicing the piano. We see these drawing exercises as places to learn. And let me tell you, if you leave your incorrectly placed line in, it helps you position the correct one, because you can reference off the one. You can think, oh, well, I can see it's not high enough at that end. So now I can draw one that is the right. And so it lets you get the right line faster, which means, and we learn things then. And then, of course, we can disguise the wrong line in some way, and we learn how to do that. None of which we do if we get fixated on every line has to be wrong, has to be right. And the other way to make the most of our time drawing sessions is to consciously choose to go with the fact that if I'm drawing faster, I need faster lines, more gestural lines. I'm going to develop a looser style, which I find always exciting to do. And I'll probably almost certainly need to learn to hold my pen a little more loosely and to move my arm a little more loosely, a little more easy, a little more freely. And quite frankly, it's the fear of mistakes that stops us doing that. And when we reinforce to our minds with the time session that this is a drawing process, drawing exercise, I'm not doing artworks, then I can loosen up. I can relax more. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't matter. And if I draw directly in ink, then I'm embracing the process of learning, because I'm saying every mark I make will still be there at the end. But can I tell you, it's a tremendous way to work out ways of drawing where every mark you make can be still there at the end, and it works into the drawing in a way that's not jarring. I mean, I've had to work out drawing freehand. Like, people keep saying, I keep getting comments saying, why do you kind of start in a little bit and then move out? And why don't you rough in the whole shapes? Because you can't rough in the whole shapes with a pen, because you can't then erase the rough bits that aren't right. You can't do lots of lines and then choose one and erase all the ones that aren't if you're not doing a pencil under drawing. And I didn't want to do a pencil under drawing, because I wanted to develop a style where I could sit in the streets of Paris and just draw directly in ink what was in front of me. And so I developed a style where I can do that. And it's not the only way to draw, but it's a way that's worked for me. And so if anyone wants to draw directly in pen, then it could potentially work for you as well. But I've learned how to do all sorts of little dots and dashes and marks, and for the way of thinking to position things and to get a sense of how things will look with just a little dot that won't be obvious at the end, even if nothing's over the top of it, if it's not in the right place and I don't use it. And I would never have worked these things out if I stayed fixated with it's got to be perfect and I've got to get the pencil perfectly done so that all the pen is in the right place. And I think I'd have had a much more stilted drawing session, drawing outcome. KM's asked, can you do a session where you draw the Eiffel Tower? Oh man, I reckon the Eiffel Tower is like one of the hardest things to draw. My understanding is the simpler a form is, the more challenging it is to draw, because there's just no room to get it wrong. But the Eiffel Tower is actually the hardest of both worlds. The actual silhouette is, I think, very hard to get right from whatever angle, because, you know, we've seen it and it does have a certain curve. There is a certain sort of flare at the bottom, and then there's more of it that's quite close together, and all of that. And if you don't get it right, it doesn't look quite right. It's a bit like, and for Parisians, it must be like when I see drawings of the Sydney Opera House, that the sails just aren't right, and it just makes me hurt inside sometimes, because I'm familiar with having grown up with them and seen them. I'm familiar with how they should look, and so it can be painful to see them often look so distorted. Well, I'm sure the Eiffel Tower is like that. But besides the very simple form, the Eiffel Tower has all that ironwork, that structural bracing ironwork within. A lot like our Sydney Harbour Bridge, if we can go to the other Sydney thing that I also often see really badly drawn. But it's that then is the problem of, how do you draw something that looks real, that you can't possibly draw the detail accurately, the detail of all the braces and how they look from a given perspective, and, you know, even if you're looking straight up or down or whatever, like, so it's really hard. You know, I find that, having said, so I haven't actually drawn the Eiffel Tower for any of my YouTube videos because of all the big Paris drawings I did. I've drawn it several times, and I think the best one I ever did, and I sold a print of it on the weekend, was a pencil one, which is, it's only part of it. It's the glimpse of the Eiffel Tower along a street. We were just walking down this street. I really had no idea the Eiffel Tower was so close. And I looked down the street and I thought, oh, you can see the Eiffel Tower at the other end. So I took a photo, and that became this drawing. Yeah, so it is very challenging. That's for sure. But look, maybe I can. I don't know whether I have a suitable photo. Generally, I only do videos using my photos for copyright reasons. So, you know, people often say, oh, could you draw this? Could you draw this? And, you know, cities with beautiful architecture, but cities I've never been to. And so it's generally not possible for that reason. Do I do? I do, but if I do, they're usually design things. They're usually patterns rather than objects. When I was a kid, I used to draw little boy drawings of the Titanic, an awful lot. 4-stacker Atlantic steamers from the turn of last century. And how has my drawing journey started? It started. I mean, I drew as a kid, and I did art at school, and then I didn't do anything. But I thought about it. But I thought about painting, and so I actually started painting when I was 50, and I painted for 10 years. Painting is much like the ones you can, little gum blossom one there and a big gum tree behind me. And I didn't really start drawing till 2018, when I was in Europe. We'd gone over for a wedding in Germany, and yeah, I just sat with one of my daughters on the way back to where we were staying. We both sat and drew Notre Dame. On a glorious summer's evening, as the sun set. The sun was actually behind the cathedral as we drew it, and that really started things seriously. And my daughter posted it that night back in the room on my Instagram page, and I discovered there was a whole world of urban sketching out there that I never knew about, and I had a lot more encouragement with my drawing than I'd ever had with my paintings, and that helped me. And I kept drawing, and at some point I had a few painting commitments. I had an exhibition and some commissions that I had to finish, but once I'd done those, I really just concentrated on the drawing, and so through lockdown, I was just doing drawings, and then the YouTube, and then the teaching, and yeah, it was great to reconnect with my teaching life from a very long time ago. So yep, that's how I started. So I actually have I think only been drawing much or consistently for 6 years, but I know that my 10 years of painting really helped me with that. And that's why I say, if you go deep in one sort of area of art, it gives you a head start then to go deep in another. But if you do, so having gone very deep in oil painting very intensely, when I began to draw, especially when I began to draw trees, I couldn't believe how much all that I learned in painting trees was helping me in drawing trees, even with a pen. And that's why I say, go deep in one area and stay in that one area. Because if you do a little bit of pencil, a little bit of pen, a little bit of watercolor, a little bit of charcoal, a little bit of pastel, a little bit of colored pencils, a little bit of mixed medium, and you go shallow in all of these areas, all that you actually learn, or what you actually learn, is how to go shallow in a lot of areas. There are skills we only learn when we go deep, but if we learn them in one area, it's easier to go down faster in a different area. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but in my experience, people who've learned to play a musical instrument really well can, what looks like, pick up a new instrument far faster than someone who's never learned an instrument. And it's not because it comes easy to them. It's just that there's a lot of overlapping skills that isn't super obvious to someone who hasn't played either instrument. So yeah. Any more questions then? If you haven't hit the like button and you're still here now, please, can you do that for me? Can someone just tell me how the sound is? Is it still got that crackling noise that some people were saying earlier? I would just like to know, does it sometimes improve during a session, or is it still crackling for you? And then if there's any more questions, it does. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for letting me know, Fayaz, Mara. That's good to know. Any final questions then? Now's your chance. It's no sync also. Yeah. It's only a slight delay for me now. It's probably a bit better than it was before, but yeah. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. It's good to know. I don't know what I can do about it. As I said, we have a good upload speed tonight. It's about 18 or something, which is very good. So yeah, I don't know. Alrighty. So there don't seem to be any more questions. So I'll just wait a few seconds in case someone is typing one. But thanks for joining. Really enjoyed this. I might try and do another live session later in the week, but my morning, so it's perhaps a better time for parts of the world that solar flares. Yes, I tell you what, I've seen such beautiful photos of some of the auroras around the world that it makes me wish I'd made a bit of an effort to see them. I saw a picture taken in Hobart where a lot of my drawings are from, because we were down there last Christmas, just before Christmas, and so I took lots of photos to draw from. But being the southernmost point in Australia, it's had the most brilliant auroras with these magnetic pulses or whatever. So yeah. Mara saying, not really a question, but seeing my channel is one of the things that have helped take a step into practicing art again. Well, that's wonderful. that's really great to hear, especially as someone who spent most of their life just thinking about it and wanting to, but not being able to. I guess in some ways, being afraid to. If we're not doing something we want to do, then unless it's, we simply don't have time, there's, there are reasons, and it's great to have encouragement to overcome the reasons. And can I say that I'm sure that the very kind response that my drawings got on Instagram were part of what encouraged me to overcome my reasons. So, even though in lots of ways it's a solitary journey when we learn to draw, in other ways, I'm not sure there's much in life that's truly solitary or that's not improved by having a bit of encouragement from other people. So look, maybe that's a great time to spot. Hey, to stop. If there's 2 people watching who haven't hit the like button, then why not get me up to 40 likes? Thanks, Stephen. Hope to see more videos about drawing the effect and shadows. Yeah, look, I tell you what, I've enjoyed those last couple of forest drawings. Well, I've done a few Australian bush scenes, which I think are the most challenging, because I think even though I'm more familiar with our bush than I am anywhere else in the world, I just think it's so scruffy and scrappy and prickly and sharp and textured. Thanks, I got to 40. That I still find it harder to draw than the others. But I so enjoyed doing that French forest scene and that Swiss forest scene that yeah, I am looking for some more similar scenes to draw, because I just think I find it very, very, very peaceful once you get into the groove. Now, these are drawings that are 45 or 60 minutes because there's simply so much hatching. But I find once you get into the groove and you've kind of established, it's interesting because I'm not establishing with those forest scenes, I'm not establishing outlines, because there aren't outlines really in a forest scene. I'm establishing areas of light and dark of various values. And once I've kind of established those, and I'm just now working on developing darker values in some areas and trying to make sure I preserve the untouched paper or the very light value areas, I find it very peaceful, very, very kind of calming and satisfying to do. Yeah. So, yeah, they are great subjects. Okay, everyone, that's an hour and a half. Time for me to wrap things up. It's oh gosh, it's almost 10 o'clock here. Yeah, I guess that's what an hour and a half after 8:30 means. So thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. And yeah, look, if you haven't tried to do any of my 10-minute real-time drawing videos, then why not check them out? They take me usually closer to 15 minutes than 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes of the video is in real time. So you get to see the pauses where I'm obviously thinking, and people sometimes say that's as helpful as seeing other what I say. They kind of can feel what I'm thinking sometimes and see the moments of hesitation where I'm not sure and I look again, or sometimes I draw on the reference to help me see something more clearly. But the last sort of maybe 4 minutes is sped up to 2 minutes so that it's still within a short period. So fantastic. All right. Thank you all. I'll see you next time. Bye.